What's really real? This your boy Conscious Lee bringing you another episode of Street Academics. This episode is about time and black trauma, you dig?
Don't shoot me down, Mr. Officer, please. Right now I'm on my knees and I fear for my life. Bang, 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 bang was all I heard from the pistol. Why they wanna take my life from me?
See, time can be defined as the indefinite continued progress of existence and events in the past, present, and future regarded as a whole, you feel me? Time is like the baggage that Erykah Badu talking about in Bag Lady that keep on getting carried from generation to generation to generation that becomes trauma. Most people view history as how things have changed over time. It creating a disconnect between what's happening now, what's happened, and what's going to happen. Historical black trauma made in America is the perfect example of how our traumatic histories continue to shape the lived experiences of black folks today. You feel me? According to the Center for Nonviolence and Social Justice, in addition to terrifying events such as violence and assault, we suggest that relatively more subtle and insidious forms of trauma, such as discrimination, racism, oppression, and poverty, are pervasive and, when experienced chronically, have a cumulative impact that can be fundamentally life-altering. Think about the time of being on a plantation and how violence experienced on the plantation manifested into trauma as a survival tactic. You know, one slave experiencing violence on the plantation could spark, enable, or sustain not only trauma for the slave getting their ass beat, but also for the slaves that could witness the slave getting their ass beat and able to relate to that violence and being able to be like, damn, that could be me. But check this out though. Just like the plantation, all black folks don't internalize trauma the same, you feel me? For instance, house slaves internalize trauma differently than slaves in the field. Some house slaves dealt with the brutality of the plantation by adhering and conforming to the politics of the plantation, by trying to maintain the slave master's favor to avoid the inhumane working conditions of the field slaves, you know what I'm saying? And sometimes field slaves went about internalizing their trauma by willing to take up life-threatening risks to escape nightmare of the plantation, or men slaves and women slaves, or, you know what I'm saying, slaves that was kids based off slaves that was old, you know what I'm saying? There's always been a multiplicity in how black people try to internalize trauma. Black trauma created through the institution of chattel slavery has shaped our strategies for survival. It subconsciously dictates the ways in which we respond to these traumatic events, and it also impacts the ways in which we teach the young generation, the next generation, how it comes. See, like, police shootings seem to be a normal occurrence these days, and the ways in which black people respond to this shit is indicative of the trauma and how it's been internalized. See, the black folks who get enraged and go march and go protest these acts of police brutality, and the black people that blame the victim for not conforming or complying to the police orders, are both enacting tactics that shaped by the traumatic experiences of being black in America. Another example of something that's really shaped the ways in which we move in the black community is how we teach young black kids how to engage around police officers. Don't move too quick. Always keep your hands visible. Say yes sir and no sir. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, don't be resistant in no way. See, but black trauma, it exemplifies for black folks how time is not linear, but cyclical and connected. You know what I'm saying? How traumatic events, when they occur, we ain't being taught nothing new at all. You know what I'm saying? We're being reminded. We're being reminded of our history. We're being reminded of why we're here. We're being reminded of what's happening now, from mass incarceration to poverty. It's all a result of our positioning in this country. Growing up down south, my grandpa used to always be like, man, your only sin is your skin. It's time for us to really recognize what it means to say Black Lives Matter. If Black Lives Matter, you know, black mental health must also matter. There is no universal way to deal with this trauma. We gotta reach different black people in different places and spaces to understand how they have to internalize trauma differently, which means we kind of dealing with different shit. You know what I'm saying? A new day does not mean a new beginning. And with the filthy ass past of America, It continues to shape and define our present actions, ultimately defining our future. And as black millennials, we need to be conscious of our legacy and how what we do today shapes the world for the next generation. So in the words of Erykah Badu, that bag lady, pack light. This is consciously bringing you another episode of Street Akademics. Peace.
Don't shoot me down, Mr. Officer, please. Right now